Power and power generation. Let's have a minute about that. Well, inevitably, because of the fact that well, I mean, it's partly because of steam. Steam. I mean, I developed so many things, like for instance, the tipping of the coal carrier. There's a train drives by and the coal carrier dumps and it goes over a bump. There's a little wheel that hits it and dumps the coal carrier. Yeah, or the mine cart, which eventually became a bigger thing. They just kind of scaled it up. Anyway, though, inevitably, because of who I was as the leader of coal power, steam power, and then coal, and then flight, and then inventor of gas engines, and a little Lucifer, more and more power was being created. Also, the inventor of the light bulb, basically. Although other people actually perfected it for me. I was wrong about. I'm sorry. When I invented the light bulb, I thought a vacuum would work best. I was wrong. My bad. Okay? My bad. I thought a piece of glass, little cap, suck the air out, put a filament inside, and it would work. I was wrong. I am entitled to be wrong about certain things. But yes, the theory of the light bulb and a vacuum. That was me. Anyway, anyway though, but yeah, inventor of steam engines and all that stuff. And inevitably, high amounts of power. One thing I did not know is that when you get up to cajillion volts, it's a little hard to turn it off. And in fact, I think some lines, they had to basically run a tractor into the pole to actually get it to turn off. They had a little bit of problem disconnecting the power. Oh, yeah, it was bad. But they quickly got that under control and figured it out. Luckily, they did small scale tests first and kind of stepped it up to something bigger. But yeah, I had a whole inventy thing. I believe it was either with the Russians or the Germans or whatever. They were doing higher and higher amounts of power, and some of the thing was basically an isolator and basically a pole, and isolating the pole so it would just churn, basically to disconnect the power, and then also the little lifty up things, and also for creating a motor. Just even the insulation on the power lines was like a. They had to create special rubber and special things and do a special thingy. And I wasn't really I was more like yeah, does it work? Oh, it works? Okay, good. That's nice. I'm glad about that. That's cool. You got it to work. My ideas were basically just somehow lifting it up, and isolating it. The isolators themselves, I think I suggested maybe glass or porcelain. I think I said glass, and they because I didn't think that that glass, and they actually tried the glass ones, and then they actually went to porcelain. Because I figured sand or glass would not be conductive, and it was actually kind of conductive. And then they developed the porcelain ones, which were actually even better. From the idea of glass, basically. But they started out with glass isolators, and then they went from there. Because I figured glass would probably be non-conductive, or as best non-conductive is what's called. And it is mostly non-conductive, but not quite non-conductive enough, apparently. So I was thinking sand, glass, because I just figured sand was the least conductive substance out there. Turns out, somewhat slightly conductive. When you turn sand into glass, I had the theory of melting sand to create glass and then using that. And that mostly worked, just not quite worked all the way. Also, getting pure sand or silica actually was actually the issue there. Because I figured sand actually has a lot of dirt and a lot of rock and other things inside of it, so they had to sift those out or melt those out, basically. But they did actually melt the sand and actually create glass from that. And so I was kind of right. I was 1/3 right about the sand. And I said, beach sand? So I was 1/3 right because that's silica, and they figured out that the silica was the part that was mostly non-conductive. Did that, tried that, worked pretty good. Did not work good enough. Came up with the porcelain isolators because of that, and other things. So anyway, and they also tried clay and some other kinds of stuff. I think the clay eventually led to the porcelain or something. Whatever porcelain is, okay? I don't know. I have a right to not have to know everything. I knew enough. So anyway, basically guessing with that pretty much. But But I mean, I just thought that it was non-metallic, non-conductive, and should be basically a general idea. Although I suppose maybe even fire brick might be non-conductive. Who knows? I was not responsible for the whole porcelain issue, but they did come up with that. They started out with glass ones and then tested other things based on that, and basically got the general idea. Anyway, and then that led to power isolation devices, which is basically, pretty much just a twisting. I was like, twisting rod maybe? Just make it so it just twists, so it's not really, the center section isn't grounded or touching anything, basically isolate that. And then make the rod so it just twists off to the side, the twisty rod. And also the lifty rod was basically my idea. It was basically 2 forks and a rod that comes down with, in there because it's such a high amount of power. And somebody actually came up with a way to actually isolate the motor so the motor was not grounded and did not fry, which I forget how they did that exactly. I had some ideas about a jacketed or something or some sort of thingy and the thingy, basically. I had a couple ideas, and then they messed around with it long enough that they perfected it. So, I mean, like I say, I didn't... Considering I had done enough. Inventor of flight, inventor of engines, inventor of the submarine, aircraft carrier, jets, breaking the sound barrier, SR-71, the kind of the rocket engine, not really, kind of mostly though, inventor of the pumpkin. I had done enough stuff. Inventor of the chainsaw. I think I invented enough. I invented more than enough, as they say. Inventor of the light bulb. Anyway, yeah. But yeah, I did invent all those things. Inventor of vacuum. And I suppose inventor of modern day medicine, or at least the separation of germy and non-germy people and dead people. Kind of, sort of, but mostly that was my people. And finder of other things. So anyway, but yeah, isolators. I said glass. I put my money on glass or actually sand. I put my money on sand, and that became glass or silica. And I was mostly right, but not right enough. Close enough though. Did better than suppose a lot of people. I don't know. And somebody said clay, which I didn't really believe. What is porcelain anyway? I'm going to have to look that up now. Porcelain. What is it? But yeah, somebody came up with one of my great scientists was messing around and knew a lot more about things than I did. And, of course, I was also a 6-year-old, 7-year-old child doing all this, inventing all these things. So, I think I did pretty good, actually, considering. I mean, 7-year-old child. World and all of its greatness versus 7-year-old Lucifer, me as a child. So I mean, come on. As they say, I did pretty damn good considering it was just like, what's your problem? Oh, stump pulling. Oh, well. What else do you need to do? You need to make steam. You need to dig dirt. A dredge, maybe. Actually, my little paddle wheel chain thingies actually work pretty good for dredging. The little paddle things on the chain. Inventor of chains. And breaker of chains, too. Yeah, though. I can laugh about it now because, I love it. Also, namer of gold. America. Russia. Yeah, I just love it because it's so true. Humanity was never the same after it met me. I was an inventor. I just had a natural instinct, I suppose, for inventing things and thinking about things. I don't know exactly why no one had ever considered oxygen or how powerful the vacuum could be. Most people actually laughed at me and didn't think it would really work. They actually thought that it wouldn't work. They never thought that they were like, nothing's going to hold it together. And I was like, I bet you. I bet a lot, too. I was like, I bet you when you get this vacuum, when you actually get a real vacuum and get it down to 0 air pressure. And I said, if you want, you can try a flat thingy, basically a little container in the middle with a little thingy to keep there, a valve or something, and then, pump it out. And I was like, I bet 4 horses can't pull it apart. I'm pretty sure. I think they did pull it apart one time. But that's because the vacuum, it wasn't a complete seal or something like that. Once they got the vacuum working, it wasn't a problem. But I don't think I think I think they were really surprised at how much pressure, or actually how well they held together. I blew a couple. I floored a couple people. They were like, "Wow!" I was like, "Yeah." I don't know why nobody thought that that would be a real force, but yeah, once you understand, you're surrounded by air, and there's, I don't know, what's that? 5 miles of air pressure kind of above us. You know, I mean, that's a fair amount of pressure right here at ground zero or down here. I was like, yeah, I bet you can't pull it apart with a horse or 4 horses. Actually, I bet 4 horses maybe. And I don't know. I was like, well, maybe an 8 inch, 4 horses, maybe some little grooves or something or a flat, you know. I was like, if it's a good seal, you won't be able to pull it apart. And I bet my life on it. Or something like that. I bet a lot. I bet you can't. And they did it, and they did the experiment, and everyone was shocked and amazed. But I can say that, yeah, that experiment was mine. How many other people can say that? Not many.